Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. So this is the follow-up video to the previous one, talking about these fantastic Nepalese kukris from the Atlanta Cutlery Corp, who've sent them to me. And they, as mentioned, they come covered in grease because this is how they were stored more than 100 years ago in the Nepalese government arsenal that they came from. And these are amazing things. They have a Devanagari script on, which tells you something about the manufacture of them themselves, like the dates sometimes, for example. And some of those markings are going to be revealed when we clean these things. I have to say I can already see a couple of markings on this one on the butt of the grip, and on the larger, on the long leaf one, you've got some quite extensive text actually up the spine of the blade. So they're great pieces of history. I absolutely love them. I've never personally had a kukri in this state which has come straight out of Nepal that I know dates to before 1898, probably before 1890. So these are Victorian era 19th century military kukris that were carried by Gurkhas in the 19th century. Or at least they were stored to be carried by Gurkhas. Can't say for certain whether they were or not, but in all likelihood probably they were, given the amount of action that was seen. And they were covered in grease to protect them, to protect the steel primarily, but also to protect the wood as well. And they've done a great job. Everything's, you know, solid and sound. They're nice and solid. So first up, I'm going to try it in the utility room. Luckily I don't have to do this in my kitchen. I don't think Lucy would like that, but we've got a utility room, so I'm going to make use of that. First of all, I have made the water hot, because obviously hot water dissolves grease, as anyone who cleans frying pans will know. So interestingly, yeah, that's already, I can actually already see this stuff coming off. Put it down for a second. I've got an old toothbrush and I have got some fairy liquid. That's right, product placement here, guys. So let's put some fairy liquid. In fact, let's put some on the blade. Slather it, loads of it around, and just get rubbing. I can see this cleaning really, really well actually. So I think this is going to be a nice, easy win for fairy liquid. Ah, oh, it's so dirty, that stuff coming off. You've got some really nice Dutura double fillers on the back of this blade, but it does collect the gunk. Obviously I'm running the water away from the grip. I don't want to, incidentally, important thing, these grips are essentially glued on, so I don't want to heat up the grip because that might make the adhesive become soft, and I don't want to do that. Wow, pretty cool. Let's do the other side. So you know what, that worked so well with the washing up liquid and the hot water that I'm going to do the other one the same way. There's no point making rags covered in grease when I can just run it hot down the sink and make it run away. So there we go. There's the comparison between the dirty blade as it arrived with the grease on and the clean blade, and as you saw, no abrasives used there whatsoever. Literally, this is I've just taken the grease off. So it's very easy to do, very quick, and you end up with a rather pleasing, good condition blade actually. So the script up the back is really nice and clean and clear now, and I will do some further work on this blade, which we'll look at in a second. One little thing, the cho there, which we've spoken so much about in previous episodes, you know, if you get like a little piece of pointed wood or bamboo or something like that, you can just kind of dig the gunk out of there because it's really quite hard in there. In fact, I'm going to have to go at that off camera because it's really sort of encrusted. But your nooks and crannies, as it were, use like a sharpened piece of wood or plastic, or a piece of bamboo, sharpened piece of bamboo, something so relatively hard but softer than the metal. You could use a softer metal, maybe, like brass for example, but I find that just a sharpened slather of bamboo, I have got one around but I can't see it right now, it does the job, and just get into these sort of nooks and crannies and dig out the dirt there. So I'm going to carry on cleaning these and then we'll come back and see how they've gone. Something else I find really cool about these is, of course, these were almost certainly used by the Nepalese military, and you can actually see signs of use on these prior to them obviously being put into the arsenal. So this one, for example, has been repeatedly resharpened, and you can see the grinding marks all down the edge. You should expect that, of course, when you're buying any sorts of antiques, but particularly these, you know, they've come straight out of the arsenal, nothing's been done to them. So you can do as little or as much. I'm actually going to do a fairly light touch in this. As you've seen so far, I've just cleaned, but you can do as little or as much as you like. You will be able to see the signs of the fact that these have been used, sharpened. You might have some nicks in the edges, you might have the chipped kind of tip occasionally. This one's got a few nicks in the edges, but that's very much part of their history, I think, and very, very cool. So next up with these, I'm just going to get a bit of WD-40 onto the blades and some wire wool or steel wool, and I'm going to do a little bit of rubbing and just get the final detritus and kind of leftovers that are stuck to the blade. As you can see on this, it's now much cleaner, but you do still have sort of bits, little bits of surface rust as well here and there. So I'm going to clean that up. So I've been over all of the iron surfaces with a wire wool and some WD-40. As I say, I'm not doing a full restoration on this in terms of, I'm not going to bring it up to looking like it was new. Obviously you could do that, you could buff this blade, you could use Autosol, you could use buffing wheels, you could use polishing pastes of various sorts, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to bring it up to a clean antique finish with the original patina that's underneath the dirt and grime and rust. I've cleaned the ferrule. You have to, I mean, I put that into my vise to do that. But you can do that with wire wool as well. There's various other, avoid sandpaper, avoid anything that's going to scratch the blade. You really want something that is softer than the blade. So if you're worried about using steel wool, then you could use bronze wool, for example, or certain types of Scotch-Brite or Brillo pads. Now, cleaning the grip is somewhat, I won't say it's more difficult, but obviously wood's a lot softer than steel. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply take an old towel I've got here. I'm going to wrap the grip in the towel and I'm just going to buff it like this, moving circularly, and that will take certainly the surface dirt and grime off. And actually, I did this a little bit before I turned the camera on, and I noticed it actually leaves quite a nice polished finish on the wood, undoubtedly because the wood has absorbed some of the oil over the century, as it were. And that's actually quite good for the wood. It's basically fed the wood, kept the wood nice and strong and not sort of dried out and rotting and anything like that. So I'm just going to do that. Grime does come off onto the towel, so don't use a towel you care about. Use an old rag of some sort, old shirt or an old towel or whatever. There we go. That's pretty much it. So as a simple cleanup job, that's at the base level. That's kind of the minimum of what I would call restoration, in that it's cleaned. Any active rust has been removed, the dirt has been removed. As you can see, these underneath the grime are in pretty nice condition. Everything's solid and secure. It's sharpish, actually. It's got some edge on it. You should certainly chop wood with that. But obviously you could refinish that edge and turn it into an implement that you actually use, 100%, but it's all solid and sound. Steel ferrules, as we do find in the 19th century and into the early 20th century, being normal. It's a very nice, this is the Bojpur one. I'm now going to do the same thing to the so-called longleaf version, and then we'll have a look at that before we wrap up. The gunk in the cho and along the bottom of the blade, the junction between the blade and the hilt, obviously there's adhesive in there, so you don't want to remove that, but it's been quite pervasive, so I've used a soft brass brush just to get in there and get the final of that gunk out. Amazingly, the wood splint wasn't doing it, it was that hard, and I didn't want to risk scratching it using a steel implement. So brass brushes are always useful. You can get various different types and sizes, so long as you're going on steel, which of course is harder than brass. Don't use it on the wood. I've just decided, particularly on one of these, on the long leaf, it was just a little bit, it's clean but it's a little bit dull. So I've decided to just finish off with a little bit of peak, just to bring out a little bit of luster in the steel, with a rag, just polishing. I'm not going to use a buffing wheel or a Dremel or anything like that. So just a bit of peak and a rag, just to give it a final buff up before I finish off. So I just to finish off with just a little bit of boiled linseed oil on the grips, because obviously the wood can be a bit dried out, although it's fairly protected by the grease. Nevertheless, just to finish it off, and also it smells nice as well and looks shiny. So there we go. Those are both done. Essentially a clean-up restoration, nothing altered, nothing changed really. They've still got the patina. I haven't done anything to the edges or anything kind of constructional to them at all. I've just cleaned them up and they now look in reasonable antique condition. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope this has been interesting or useful, or both. And by all means, check out those links below. I think these are really, really interesting kukris, and it's great to have that provenance, that absolute cast iron provenance attached to them, and know that they are 19th century examples from the Nepal arsenal, from the military stores. And I think they were really great things. I'm very happy to have them in my collection. Thanks a lot for watching. Give us a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you really soon again on Schola Gladiatoria channel. Cheers folks.